Matt from Elevate Building Group. Welcome to Build Hatch.
Pleasure. Thanks, Aaron. Cheers for having me.
So, Matt, you're most well known for your work on the block and Renault Rumble. Now, before we talk about that, we always like to go back in time. So, we're here in Melbourne. Did you grow up in Melbourne?
Yeah. So I grew up northeastern suburbs. So always been in the area. Still am living here. So realistically, sort of stock standard, family of five growing up. Yeah. So 3 kids. I was the youngest. So a couple older brother, older sister, and just a stock standard upbringing. Little bit sort of strange that none of my parents or brothers or sisters were in the trade or in that industry at all. So I suppose realistically, sort of moving up, sort of coming through school and things like that, it was sort of a bit of a decision from left field that decided to get into carpentry and subsequently getting to building. Yeah.
So I'm interested to know, what steered you in that direction when you were at school?
Yeah, look, to be honest, once it dawned on me, it was a bit of a surprise to myself as well. Went to Marcellin College, which is sort of quite a well-respected private boys' school. I suppose back then it was there wasn't a stigma around trades or anything like that, but that school was sort of more tailored towards the academics and sort of the course to take was to go to uni. And that was sort of in my head. That's what I thought I wanted to do. So through VCE and things like that, I was sort of quite passionate about the folio subject. So I was doing visual communication and design, which was sort of like a cross between graphic design and architecture. That was sort of the route I thought I wanted to take. So with that, I was always sort of a bit of a logical thinker and a good problem solver. I always sort of had that ability and I knew that about myself. So I was always sort of tinkering around and just even at home, just sort of, I don't know, as you do as a kid, sort of you're building weird bits and pieces, slingshots and all that sort of stuff and problem solving. So I had that tendency, but going through VCE, as I said, I thought that I was set on going to uni. That was the course that I sort of, as I said, sort of the family environment. Everyone else went to uni and both parents were sort of professionals. So that was what I thought was the course.
Now, Marcellin College, it's a pretty good AFL school.
Yeah. Have you seen the grounds? Quite lush green.
It is.
They pride themselves on their turf, that's for sure.
Okay, so going through the VCE,
Yeah.
you then made a decision. Look, I'm not going to go to university. I'll go out and get a trade. Is that how it works?
So I actually did go to uni. Spent 6 months. Managed to, as I said, I had a passion for the folio subjects, and as I said, I was studying Viscom, so visual communication and design.
Oh, so that was at university?
No. So that was through VCE,
Through VCE.
Then obviously ANTA scores came out, and I was fortunate enough to get a position at Swinburne, and I was studying industrial design. So spent 6 months doing that. Got to the mid-year break, end of the first semester, and I just sort of, I was scratching my head. I just said, look, in theory, there's a basis of this course that I've got a passion for, but it's just not me. It's not sitting well, and I know that even if I do push to see it through, it's not a career path.
Was it a difference between, I guess, the theory side of it and you were craving the practical side?
I think so. There was the good thing about industrial design, it was always finding a solution to a problem. You were trying to design a product to solve a brief or to fit that need or that function. That was where my passion or my drive came from, and that was the enjoyment. But it was more the art and that side of things and those sort of principles, which it didn't gel for me. It didn't click, and just there wasn't that passion there. I could tick along and I dare say I could have finished the course, but it wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't really going to progress any further than that. So in that, as I said, mid-year break, end of the first semester, I had a family friend that was a builder and jumped on board just labouring with him just to pick up a bit of work in the holidays. And we were just doing manual labour, just pulling up concrete, footpaths and things like that, just kicking around. And to be perfectly honest, I loved it. Like it was the first. I've always worked from a young age, but that was the first job where you could actually see the progress at the end of the day. And it was sort of reward for the effort. and sort of picking his brain and things like that. Obviously, he was a successful builder. It just sort of got my mind ticking over. Carpentry might be an avenue. As I said, I was sort of interested in the architecture side of things and property and homes and the structure and the design of them. So I sort of started thinking, how can I sort of mould a career around that, and then also sort of combine that with a trade sort of apprenticeship and career path, and sort of somehow come full circle, maybe 10 years down the track, and sort of gel them all together, which is sort of somehow I've done it in a way. I don't know how, but it's all sort of worked and it's all sort of clicked. So
yeah, it's a good combination. So how did you, I guess, take that plunge and apply for an apprenticeship? Did you know someone or?
No, it was just as I said, it was. I was doing that labouring work for around about a month in the holidays, and over that time, it was sort of the first probably week or so. It was sort of not an epiphany, but yeah, sort of a bit of a light bulb moment. And then sort of floated the idea with my old lady, and she sort of just looked at me, and not that she wasn't supportive by any means. It wasn't that at all, but it was
different.
Yeah, out of left field. As I said, none of my family were trades or anything like that, so it was definitely out of left field. So you just sort of said, do what you want to do. So and I sort of knew. It just clicked. It just clicked, and it just felt right. Yeah. So basically, back in the day, I mean, realistically, it was only 2009, 2010. It would have been. No one does it anymore. But opened up the local paper and had a look for any ads or of builders looking for an apprentice. And there was one. It was a local builder just in the next suburb over, and he was a registered builder doing renovations, extensions, and new builds. So I sort of saw that, and I said, look, that's quite diverse. I'm not one to sort of pigeonhole myself. And doing an apprenticeship under a builder, you're going to see the full scale of the build process rather than just the carpentry aspect or just doing framing or a fix or a lock-up or something like that.
You got that exposure to the whole build.
So that was that sort of was number one option. So I gave him a phone call, and within the space of a week or two had an interview with him, and that was that. Pretty much just dived in and it just sort of took off from there. And I've always been in a way a little bit of a goer, so I think he was pretty surprised by sort of each week that ticked by. I was buying a new tool and getting all excited. And as we were sort of discussing before, you sort of have to have the new toys and the best of everything. So I think by the end of my first year, I had a ute and a tool trailer, and it was pretty well stocked. So he was wrapped, and I sort of used him. I mean, obviously he was benefiting from me and my passion and my drive to sort of learn as much as I could, but I was sort of using him to basically ask for more responsibility, sort of lump more expectation on me. And from sort of halfway through my apprenticeship, I was essentially running jobs for him and sort of managing trades. And he just a few phone calls through the week, and I wouldn't see him for a week or two. It was good.
I bet he loved it.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. I've got this opportunity to realistically learn as much as I possibly can, and he's taking a punt on me to do the right thing by him.
Yeah, so I think
it's a two-way street.
The right perspective is it's a win-win.
Yeah.
And he's relying on you just as much as you're relying on him. So to have that, and that comes back to leadership as well, I think too. So having those qualities from a young age, and then being effectively a sponge, if you like, to just learn as much as you can, ask lots of questions. And then you probably had that client interaction too, which a lot of apprentices wouldn't normally get.
That's exactly right. And that was as you said, that was a important learning experience, because you see that side of things. You're managing client expectations and sort of responding to their queries or concerns with the day-to-day operations of what goes on site. A lot of the time we were doing renovations and the clients were living there, so there was that close contact. And that was sort of a good eye-opener. It's almost a little bit of customer service at the same time.
It is.
As well as swinging a hammer. So, it was good.
Which is a big part of building, is
definitely
managing relationships.
You've got to be a people person, don't you?
You do,
Get the best out of everyone.
Yeah,
so.
that's right. There's a lot of diverse people and personalities in construction.
Exactly.
So Okay, so moving on from your apprenticeship, what did you do then?
Yeah, so that was, I mean, realistically, that was sort of up until halfway through my apprenticeship, and as I was saying, I was sort of always obsessed with progression and sort of looking forward, and always try and sort of set a plan for the next sort of 3 to 5 years, and working out what I can do now to put me in the best position or put me on that trajectory. So I made the punt. So obviously I was doing an apprenticeship, doing my Cert 3, and decided to bite the bullet and enroll in doing a Cert 4, which is the schooling that you need to get your builder's license. So I was doing my Cert 4 while I was doing my Cert 3.
Yeah, you're doing both.
Yeah. So I was doing that at night school, spent the better part of 18 months or almost 2 years doing that, ticking along. And I actually got my Cert 4 before I finished my Cert 3. So it was a little bit backwards, but I ticked those boxes by the time I was out of my time, which was good, because you sort of, in retrospect, once you sort of finish your apprenticeship and you're out and you're essentially qualified and subbing or running companies, it's pretty hard to bite the bullet and go back to schooling.
Yes.
So I was sort of that's something that I'll pat myself on the back that I made that choice early on, because it did put me on the right course to, gave me the tools to, obviously, once I finished my apprenticeship, start the business, and it was pretty much just go from there.
And what's important about that story is it shows the initiative that you need to have in order to, whether it's any sort of business, but particularly in construction world, you need to go above and beyond. If it's a case of going without sleep, you go without sleep.
Yeah.
If you have to work a second job to fund a project for cash flow, that's just what you have to do. There's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make.
It's about being proactive as well. Obviously, sort of to do the night school, I had to take a year off footy, because the night school classes, I was just playing local footy, so it was nothing big, but that was a little passion of mine, little outlet. So I had to sacrifice that because it clashed with training and things like that. And as you said, you sort of, whether it be get a second job and things like that. While I was doing my apprenticeship, I was actually bartending as well. So doing Friday, Saturday nights, it was sort of twofold, earning a bit of extra coin, and sort of eliminated me going out on the piss as well. So it's sort of, it was good. It was always sort of, and then once I got to the point where I could do sort of little weekender decks and little handyman jobs through my apprenticeship for friends and family and things like that, it was sort of just substitute one for the other. And
look, they're the sacrifices that you have to make, aren't they? And you just work overtime or work extra, and sacrificing a year of your life for football, although at the time it was probably painful. It's one of those things you look back in time and say it was nothing for where I am today.
That's exactly right.
That was a small sacrifice, and I'm glad I did it. Yeah,
absolutely. It's all about, as I said, I'm a firm believer, you sort of look at where you want to be in 3 years' time, and then make the choices now that point you in that direction and set yourself up for it.
So once you obtained your Cert 4 in building, did you sort of transition into your own business, or how did you sort of
so it was,
work into that?
Obviously, it's a 4-year apprenticeship. I finished my trade schooling and the theory side of things about 6 months early. So in theory, my employer could sign me off early, which I did. So I knocked about the back end of my apprenticeship off. The last 6 months I knocked off. He just signed me off early, and as soon as I got wind of that, it was bang, set up a proper company, register a business name, and had a short list of names. And it was pretty much, I was always, I didn't want to I wanted to stand, in terms of business name, obviously, it's hard. You don't want to be similar to someone else and things like that. So I had a short list, jump on the ASIC website and work out what was available, what wasn't, what clashed, what didn't. And Elevate was sort of something that wasn't really around. There were no sort of websites or social media pages or anything like that in the construction space. So that was the winner. So I registered, and that was it. Sort of as soon as I got signed off, bang, operating as a company and sort of trying to source and find whatever work I could. Yeah.
Now, I have a feeling I know the answer to this already, but the name Elevate Building Group, what's behind that?
I think it's just sort of appropriate in a way. You sort of obviously building, you're sort of coming up out of the ground, it's sort of rising. So it's a bit of a play on that, but I think it's It's just I was always adamant that I wasn't going to have something affiliated with my name. My surname's a bit of a mouthful. It's about 11 letters long and every letter in the alphabet almost. So no one can pronounce it. So that makes it a little bit difficult. So it was...
I didn't intentionally avoid pronouncing it at the beginning, by the way.
You're not alone. But the funny thing is, it's actually... My old man was actually born in Italy. So it's an Italian surname. And then people see my surname written down and they look at me. They're like, what's going on there? The milkman's son or something. So obviously podcast isn't visual, but I've got red hair, so I don't look Italian.
All right, so what were those days like? You had your company name, you had the business ready to go, you had your shortlist or your network.
Yeah, so that was the thing. I definitely looked the part, had the ute, had the trailer, had the company gear and all the tools, but not much of a work supply. So we were I was just taking whatever I could, drifting around a couple of local builders. Nothing was a solid 40 hours a week. And that's the thing, that you're relying on sort of subcontracting and somewhat of a stable income. So I was fortunate enough to be in a position I was still at home at that point. So no serious overheads or no serious expenses. So I had a bit of a safety net there. And then just basically bit the bullet. I had a phone call from a mate's old man who are commercial concreters. They do a lot of service stations and things like that, and they were pumping at the time, and they knew sort of I finished my apprenticeship and I was floating around looking for work, and they just threw the offer out there, and I sort of looked at it, and a lot of people, concreting is hard work.
It is.
The way I sort of looked at it, well, I haven't had too much experience. You do the odd sort of alfresco slab or something like that in a domestic build, but they're doing service stations, they're doing serious stuff. So that was another opportunity for me to sort of get a little bit of experience outside of what I normally did have. So jumped on board with them, and I was sort of day one, met at their factory in Tullamarine at 5 a.m, drove to Beaufort, however far that is, about over 2 hours, and put in some big days. And I was working with them for 2 or 3 weeks, and hats off to them because they go like buggery to get the job done, and it was a good insight. So that sort of served its purpose. Was working with them for about 3 weeks, and then I had another local builder sort of call me and was basically looking for a reliable carpenter just to basically work for them, essentially 40 hours a week, but obviously not working full time on wages. It was just a subcontract basis sort of. He'd give us a scope of works for different builds, and we'd take care of them. So as that grew, had a few subbies drift in, drift out, and to give me an extra set of hands. And then once that sort of stabilised a bit, I bit the bullet and put on an apprentice. So realistically, I got signed off from my apprenticeship 6 months early, and then 6 months down the track, when I should have just been qualified, that's when I employed my apprentice. So
when you have such high standards and you have that high level of drive, it can be so difficult being on the opposite end of the stick where you're the boss and you're employing an apprentice.
That's exactly right. And
it's frustrating, isn't it?
It was something that I dove into without... I saw it as something that was necessary because, as I said, my workload was picking up, and I was relying on subcontractors to come in and give me an extra set of hands for the sake of cladding or doing a fix or things like that. But you're paying a premium for it, and you can, in a way, if you're working one-on-one, you can achieve the same result with a young bloke with a first-year apprentice and bring them up through the ranks and teach them the way that you want to do things. Whereas if you're using subcontractors, they're almost set in their ways. They've had 4 years experience, they've been around, they do what they want to do. So that was my mindset, but it was a completely different dynamic once in the first few weeks. Once he jumped on board, he was a young kid, fresh out of school. Realistically, I wasn't too far ahead of him. I only had a few years on him in terms of age, but it was something that I hadn't really thought about. I've actually got to teach him. I never had the experience. When I was working with my old boss, it was always sort of me ticking along by myself or managing trades that were older than me, more experienced than me. I've never had to teach a young kid that's fresh out of school, sort of not immature, but it's a brand new job for him. So first time on a job site as well, in a way. So that was it was a bit of a head scratcher, and I'll put my hand up. I probably In retrospect, the way I handle apprentices now is a lot different to the way I did. But hats off to young Louis. He's fast forward six years, he's still with us, so I couldn't have traumatized him too much. No, and he's a ripper. He's and that's testament to sort of if you put the time into someone and teach them the ethics and the way you want to go about things, and their morals are aligned, they'll stick around. So we've got a good relationship. Yeah.
Now, as mentioned earlier in the intro, you're well known for your work on the block and Renault Rumble. So how did that come about?
Truth be told, it was just a cold phone call. So as I said, it was around about, good segue, it was around about the same time. So realistically, it was probably 3 months after I put young Louis on as a first year apprentice. So I was, just over probably 8 months out of my apprenticeship. I was working on a job site in Mitcham for a builder. And we obviously started at 7 a.m, got a phone call around about Smoko, and it was contestants on the block. This is going back 2015, it was. And the phone call sort of was something along the lines of, we've found your website through Google, where contestants on the block, obviously I'd watched the show, so I knew what they were talking about. They alluded to the fact that it was day one and they needed a builder that day, essentially ASAP. So I was already on a job site that I started there at 7 a.m. This was probably 10:30, 11. By 2 p.m, I sent young Louis home. He had an early knock-off, and by 2 p.m. that day I was in South Yarra getting mic'd up with cameras in my face and
fair dinkum,
fulfilling the role as a builder. And it was at that time where, in a way, I sort of felt sick, butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, I've bit off more than a few here. What have I got myself into? I'm like, I just got to, in a way, yeah.
So is that really how it works? Because
100%.
I'll be honest with you, like you and I getting to know each other before this, I honestly thought there's a whole crew of guys that's all behind the scenes, and these guys that are going on the show, they might do, say, 4 or 5 hours of camera time, and then you guys are the ones behind the scenes doing all the work. That was my honest opinion before this.
So that's the thing. I mean, contestants are in control of finding their own trades. That's the spin that the producers put on it. That's them throwing them in the deep end. They don't give any help.
They give them that chaos.
So, and then they just sit back and watch it unfold. And the thing is, I mean, in the industry, some tradesmen sort of, the block carries a little bit of a bad stigma. A lot of tradesmen don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So trying to convince a builder to jump on board and put themselves in that environment, do what they do for a living in front of
I'm with you.
Viewers a night,
I see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, and that was exactly right. I mean, I was only 8 months out of my apprenticeship, just started my own company. I mean, what better platform or pedestal or an opportunity could there be for me to do what I do for a living at an early time in my career to sort of either sink or swim in a way.
Now, I have to ask this. Was your name on Google SEO or anything like that? Did you pay to have it ranked back then? Or
No. So it was I was smart in sort of how I structured the website. I was going back. I mean, I'm not a buff on the SEOs or anything like that, but I was conscious of always putting Melbourne construction, Melbourne builder, Melbourne carpentry in the content, in the text content of the website. So that sort of improved results and things like that. So look, I couldn't even tell you how many pages they went through to come across my website, or how many other builders that they called that hung up on them or said no before they got to me. But
well, who knows? Yeah. It could come back to the simple name, Elevate Building.
Yeah.
It's has good connotations and
so
paints a particular image in people's minds. So
it's I mean, that was that is the famous question. How'd you get the first one? Did someone sort of did you weasel your way in there? But it really was just a cold phone call. So with very, very short notice, about 2 hours, and I was there getting mic'd up.
As they say, the harder you work, the luckier you get, and that's a clear
right.
example, isn't it? Really,
that is. I've heard that a lot of times, and people go, "Geez, you're lucky." I'm like, well, I'm not a leprechaun. I'm just, I'm just a yes man. That's all it is.
Yeah. That's great.
So
awesome story.
That was that was day one on the block, and as I said, to paint a picture of sort of the environment of it, we walked into a 24-hour challenge and basically had to turn around a full bedroom renovation in that day. So we were starting at 2 p.m. and it had to be finished by 3 p.m. the next day. So
it was an all-nighter then.
It was an all-nighter. Got to about 6 a.m. Sunday morning, and I was just sort of, mind you, I started on the other job in Mitcham at 7.
Yeah, so you hadn't had a chance to get some sleep or
nothing.
Rest beforehand.
Full 24 hours with the nail bag on, and then got to the point where we were going to fall short. So I sent a message, Hail Mary, out to my brother-in-law who was a chippy. I said, mate, you wouldn't believe what I've done, what hole I've dug myself. I said, I need a chop out. Painted the picture for him, and he goes, yep, I'm jumping in the car, I'm on my way. So in the space of an hour, he was there, helping out, basically rescuing us, getting the room across the line. Also had to call me footy coach, tell him, mate, sorry, I can't play this morning, or we had a game at midday, can't play, I haven't slept. He didn't know it was because I was working, but explained that to him afterwards. And, and then we handed the room over by 3 p.m. So what's that? A good 30, 36 hours wearing a nail bag, and that was day one.
Yeah, it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
Plus adding all the complicated environment, with showbiz and
that's a
cameras
and and they got to create the drama. They're pushing your buttons purposely and just sitting back and watch how you handle it and what their reaction is and how you play into their narrative. They're good at it.
I bet.
Yeah.
So from there, what was your involvement after like that first initial stage?
So that was it. So that was the first. Yeah, that was the first day, and then for that series, the contestants. Obviously, that's the first little hurdle to get over for the contestants, and to work out who gets what house or what apartment. And then from then on, it's a full 12 weeks renovating. And this one was the one on the Octagon, so the one in Commercial Road. So it was a high-rise apartment. And it was, as I said, 12 weeks. So they called me the next day and pretty much we had a bit of a chat, and they go, are you in a position you bailed us out today and yesterday, but are you in a position to commit for the next 3 months? So, yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Automatically yes.
Yeah. Sometimes yes is a full sentence. So, and that was that. Basically pumping out 80, 100 hours a week, just swinging a hammer. Obviously fortunate enough to have a real good network of family friends who were trades.
So you could just bring those guys in as needed.
Correct. Yeah. So whether it be plastering or plumbing or electrical or those trades, that was sort of not only my network, but sort of friends of friends who have heard of the situation that I got myself in and needed a lot of help and a lot of support. And somehow we all banded together and did a ripper effort. Fast forward 3 months, I think the contestants walked away with just shy of $500,000 so in prize money. So it was a great result. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So that was 2015.
That was 2015.
Yeah.
And you've been a part of subsequent series of the block as well?
Yeah, correct. So the way they operate, they want the contestants to be the characters in the show in a way. They want them to be the main event. So they're not too keen on having the builders having a constant recurring role. So as a result, I've done every second year since then. So I did obviously the block in 2015, Reno Rumble, which was sort of an offshoot. We did that in 2016. 2017, we went round for the block again. And then again last year in 2019, did the block. So 2017, 2019, we had a good result and won both of them. So
it's a proud effort, isn't it?
It's huge, yeah. We were stoked. Big prize money and a good little feather in the cap, really. Yeah.
And just that exposure of saying yes when they rang and you're already on a job site, can you do it? You just said yes, and then fast forward, it's amazing to see just by saying yes at that point in time where it's got you today.
Exactly. And I'm just a firm believer of if you take every opportunity, there's subsequently doors are going to open. Some path can lead to nowhere, and some paths can be real fruitful. So you just got to have faith that it'll pay off.
It's swings and roundabouts, as everyone often talks about.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can have ups and downs, and fork in the road moments, but it's about going through it, getting there, and then reassessing the situation. And
Exactly.
I think a key message that you've mentioned is that 3-year plan, having that strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you adapt and change it, but just having that 3-year plan, it could have a few mountains in it,
Exactly.
or a few steeply dipping.
Because I mean, at
low
the end
spots.
of the day, what's the alternative? You just stagnate, really. And I mean, at the end of the day, each to their own. If you're content with that, that's fine. But I know myself, I sort of need, in a healthy way, just to obsess with progression. In a way, there is no real end goal. It's just a matter of sort of, setting checkpoints and trying to work out what I can do to get myself there.
All right. So you mentioned progression before. Now, as a business owner, that's always a challenge to manage that, because being an inspiring leader within your own business and you're surrounding yourself with a crew of guys that work with you, how do you handle that to keep those guys motivated and progressing?
It is hard, truth be told. It's something that I'm sort of always battling with, trying to create. I think firstly you got to try and create an environment where people feel welcome, and people are the right fit. You sort of need to make sure that they're someone who wants to grow and progress with you and are there to buy in. I think that's the biggest thing, and then trying to sort of demonstrate and instill sort of your values and your morals and your ethic, and your work rate to sort of set the expectation and demonstrate what's needed and what's required, and making sure that they're comfortable with that. At the end of the day, maybe they just aren't the right fit for the team, but the ones that are, the ones that sort of stick around, and it's testament to the boys that we've got on now. There's 6 of us, and as I said, young Louis, the first one that I ever employed, he's still swinging a hammer for us, and he's smiling every day. So it's good.
Yeah, that's always great to look back on.
Yeah.
What's the future look like with Elevate Building Group? Where are you sort of looking at taking your business into the future?
Interesting question. Truth be told, as I was saying earlier, I don't have a big grand end goal. There is that's not sort of how I operate. As we've said, a little bit of a healthy obsession with progression. So it's always sort of just ticking along and what's the next challenge I can set myself? How can I push myself? How can I keep it interesting? So I sort of had some good growth in the business and exposure and things like that. As a result, to be able to capitalise on that, obviously needed to convert from being a run-of-the-mill carpenter with a chippy crew to becoming a registered builder. So ticked that box a couple of years ago, and as a result, I've sort of dove into sort of the more full-on aspect of domestic work, where it is sort of being the head honcho builder, sort of running jobs and whether it be sort of $500,000 new builds or renos and extensions. Or
so you just pretty well cover all the residential market, really.
I don't like to pigeonhole myself. It's sort of I get bored quickly, truth be told. So I need a bit of diversity, and it helps setting up a bit of a robust business model, I guess. You sort of things that we've gone through down in Melbourne as of late with a bit of a downturn and things like that. I think, say you were focusing on your niche market was the volume build side of construction, I think you probably would have been affected. Whereas we're sort of focusing on the mum and dad renovators and developers and things like that, and that market hasn't been affected yet. So I think the more you diversify yourself, the healthier the business is, and the more robust it is, and it can sort of absorb any sort of shockwave or any sort of downturn and adjust and keep pushing on.
I think having the right amount of crew as well, that optimum number of single digits, keeping it under 10, so you can adapt and roll with the punches. You can, if you need to tap into a bathroom, you can do that. If someone needs a deck done, you can do that in between these larger $1 million jobs or $500,000 jobs.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I've tried over the past few years. I've tried to scale. We've had a few different sort of large contracts come through in terms of like the carpentry scope of, we did 12 townhouses about 18 months ago. So we needed blokes swinging a hammer. We needed the boots on the ground, because obviously you've got your checkpoints, you've got your dates, you've got your schedule. So if you rock up with a crew of 4, it's not really adequate. You're not going to be able to keep up. We sort of found realistically you're sort of ramping up, you're scaling too quick, and you don't have time to vet the right blokes for being the right fit for the company.
And it's hard to get that time to put the systems with that growth.
That's exactly right. I mean, we literally doubled in size in a couple of months.
Yeah. That's a clear example where it's not a bad thing, but it's just part of that evolution.
Yeah.
You need the boots on the ground, as you said. So your first step's to put the person in the role and then look after the systems and everything after that.
That's exactly right. And no disrespect to the boys that we brought in, the subbies that jumped on board. They're great carpenters in their own right, hence why I reached out to them, hence why I got them on board. But the business model and the structures that I had in place just weren't equipped to deal with that scale. So not bitter about it. I was happy to give it a go, roll the dice, but it didn't pay off. And I sort of looked at it, I said, what? I've doubled the stress, doubled the heads, doubled the overheads, and
I haven't doubled the
exactly.
profit.
It just doesn't add up. So at the end of the day, we sort of gave it a try. It didn't stick. So revert back to what we know and keep the core crew of 6, and that's what we've done ever since, and it works. It's comfortable. It's good.
I love the pivot. At least you tried. You gave it your all. Realised it's very difficult because that's where I was sort of talking earlier before about career progression, because I often find there's a lot of younger guys who are watching, waiting, a bit like a younger version of yourself, and they're thinking, oh, well, I've seen Matt do all this work.
Yeah.
This is easy. I can go out and do it. And taking that plunge, making that step from carpenter to builder, it's a massive step that you just cannot underestimate, that added stresses and the complications that come with being a builder.
Absolutely. And it's not like you click your fingers. I mean, you get your builder's ticket, your DBU, and it's not like just because you got the ticket doesn't mean that you've got all the answers. I mean, even now, as soon as I got my builder's license, I treated it as if I was going back to an apprenticeship. I was learning this whole other aspect, and unfortunately, you don't have anyone to fall back on. I mean, during your apprenticeship, you're learning carpentry, you've got your boss to ask questions. If you're a DBU, you're expected to have all the answers, but it's your first time doing it. So in a way, there's a little bit of, I guess, bluffing your way through and just trying to use the resources and use your network, making sure you have a good support group and not being afraid to ask the question or try and seek advice, but just having the ability to find the answer and making sure that if you are rolling the dice, you're in a position to recover if it turns south or if you stuff up.
Yeah, it's about being prepared, and sounds like you're well prepared and you're always looking ahead.
Just wise about the areas that I roll the dice in, knowing that if they're calculated decisions. I mean, I would describe myself as someone who's calculated, but not with a negative connotation, more so just strategic and just everything's very well thought through.
I think it's about just giving everything a slight health check. It doesn't need to be a complicated exercise. Have you got a network, or is there someone that you speak to when you're thinking about making these big decisions?
I do. I've fortunate enough. I mean, with our offices in the industrial district of the northeastern suburbs, and all the builders in the area are either next door, upstairs, or across the road. So, and we're all close. I mean, although in theory we look at each other, and in theory from the outside it might be seen as competitors, but it's not like that at all. We're all pretty chummy. We're all of a similar age, and we all help each other out. So we always sort of over a beer on a Friday arvo sort of pick each other's brains and vent a little bit. So there's that aspect of it, which is healthy, which is great. And then obviously there's master builders and things like that where you can seek legal advice and stuff like that. And another one, Registered Builders Network, which is who I did my schooling to get my DBU through. They're a good support network as well. So it's all about surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are sort of willing to help and going through a similar thing.
Now, when you're not building or busy running your crew or doing TV building work, what does Matt like to do outside of work?
There's not too much time outside of that, to be honest. That's the week pretty much full. But as I said, a little bit of local footy. nothing too serious. It's more of a mateship thing. Obviously, you get a little bit older and the pulling the boots on becomes less of a priority, and it's more Thursday night dinners and beers. So there's that aspect of it. And lovely wife, got married around about 10 months ago now. So and we've just renovated our own house. So realistically, my spare time is still building in a way. It's not for clients, it's for myself. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm wrapped with sort of what we're doing and what we've built. It's great.
Exciting times.
Yeah. Just getting started really, so it's good.
All right. So having a bit of a profile like you do with your business and having had that exposure on national television, how do you handle the interaction with clients? Like a client who wants to engage Elevate Building Group and build their home. How do you sort of handle that?
There's definitely a stigma around the TV shows that I've done. A lot of the jobs that I do go to, they have some form of prior knowledge of me fulfilling that role on the show. So positive or negative, I've had both experiences. But you really I'm confident in sort of how I've been portrayed on the shows and how I operate day to day. So you really have to sort of gauge what their view is from the get-go and then treat their job as the most important job at that time, realistically. I was sort of once told by a lecturer when I was doing night school, it was wise words. He always said, doesn't matter if you're doing a $100,000 job or a $1.2 million job, to that client, that's essentially their life savings and the most important thing that's going on in their life at that time. So you have to treat each job with the same amount of respect, with the utmost purpose and the utmost care, to make them feel like you're genuine and they're a priority in your eyes. So that's I've taken that and run with it because it's true. You're dealing with, the industry is a strange one because you're dealing with people's homes. It's meant to be their safe place.
There's a lot of emotional attachment that goes along with building someone's family home versus a development or a investment property.
That's exactly right. And I mean, we've had experiences in both things. We're doing renovations for people while they're living in the home, but then we've also done the property moguls and the tycoons who are just worried about slapping up units and worrying about the spreadsheets and the
numbers
and the ROIs. So you have to be able to shift and move and treat each job with the respect that it needs. Yeah.
I think in hindsight, having the exposure that you've had, a lot of people would think it's easier for you, but I actually agree with you and resonate with you where you said like it comes with an expectation or stigma on a different level.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I mean, if I had $1 for every time anyone brought up the block with me or queried the block or something like that, it's I've sort of learnt now the way I respond is, well, they'll bail me up and they'll go, so how was the block? And I'll sort of stop them there. I say, well, what are your thoughts on it? Because you either watch it because you love it, you watch it and shake your head, or you just won't even have it on the TV, on the box. So I want to know what your view is before I respond, because if people have strong opinions, whatever I say is not going to convince them. So
I think it comes with your personality too, and I mean this in a good way, but very calm and collected.
Yeah.
I think that sums up from us getting to know each other.
Absolutely. And I'm just probably in a way a little bit too proud for my own good, but I'm confident in sort of how I operate and how I handle every situation. And I don't need external affirmation or anything like that. I'm pretty happy with sort of how we're ticking along and how I operate. And that's good enough for me, really.
And I can see it in your DNA. I talk about this all the time, but I always like to step back and I have a look from an outsider looking in. And that's to tie it in with your branding. That's operating at like an elevated level of thinking.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, that's what we try and convey. A lot of people, mates and things like that are in the industry as well, they sort of query why I do put so much time into the social media marketing and things like that, and try and pump up the jobs that we're doing in terms of giving it attention and unpacking the build process and sharing it with the community. And they sort of question why I bother doing it. And my thought is it's just promoting transparency. If if I'm willing to put it on a platform for everyone to see, it shows that I'm genuinely proud. I've got nothing to hide, and it creates that sense of familiarity with the client before I even go and have the site meeting with them. They already feel like they've had a walkthrough of my previous jobs or my current jobs. They feel a sense of comfort rather than just a client engaging a trade blindly, really.
Yeah, look, I often talk about this with people in the industry, and the whole social media presence and the investment that you're making by putting yourself out there. Often people, when they contact you for the first time, there's two important steps that have happened when they're reaching out to you in today's world, right? So they're skipping first base because they've already got, even though it's a social media relationship, they've been watching you, they've been seeing how you interact, how you sound, how you deal with your people. They've been driving past your sites, seeing, is it a tidy site? You know, how does it look looking in from the outside? So they've been watching and waiting, and then combine that with that first step of skipping that first base. They've already got almost not a relationship established, but some sort of interaction.
That's exactly right. And I mean, we talk about it's the age-old thing of word of mouth is invaluable. And back in the day, word of mouth only spread through previous clients, but now I've got a few client inquiry forms that I'll get initial or early stage clients to fill out, and a few hard-hitting questions just to sort of brief them and give me a little bit of background. And time again, they'll say, there's a question there that says, how did you find us? How did you hear about us? And it's a lot of them will say, so-and-so recommended you. And I'll look at the name. I don't even know that person. So I dare say that they're one of our many followers, and they see and respect what we do. And maybe it's just come up in a conversation over a coffee or a beer. Oh, we're looking for a builder. Oh, I've seen this one. He's local. He's doing great work. Give him a buzz. So it's tapping into that. And I haven't even done work for them. They just respect how we operate and what we do and what we put out there. And it comes back around full circle.
It certainly does. All right. Well, Matt from Elevated Building Group, it's been great sitting here talking to you and getting your real story out there. So congratulations on that incredible achievement, having been a builder on the block. And I just love hearing the real stories, how you just said yes back in time, and you've obviously got some exciting prospects moving forward with Elevated Building Group. So thanks for coming on to Build Hatch.
Thanks, Aaron. Much appreciated. Exciting times, just getting started.